Hi everyone. Today I'm doing video 4 in my series about Madeleine McCann. Um, there are probably going to be a total of 5 videos in this series, so this is the second to last one. The next video I will be exploring what I believe happened to Madeleine McCann. Before we get into this video though, I just wanted to, I suppose, uh, make a couple of statements or comments. Firstly, I just want to thank everyone who has engaged with my videos on this series. I didn't anticipate the support and attention that the videos would receive, and thank you to everybody who's watched and commented. I've really enjoyed reading your comments. A few people have brought up the issue of the sound to me. I'm aware that the sound on my videos hasn't been all that great or professional, and I'm sorry about that. I'm very much an amateur at the video making game, and I certainly hope that the sound will be louder and clearer in this video. So let me know if that is the case. But thank you to those who brought that to my attention. I did know about it. I honestly just didn't anticipate that my videos would be as watched as they ended up being. Um, but I will try to address the sound issue from now onwards. And then there was another issue I just wanted to comment on. There was one commenter who said something along the lines of that they found it disturbing that I was making videos capitalizing on this tragedy and making money from this case. And I just want to say, first of all, I honestly believe in everybody's right to have an opinion. Everyone has a right to believe whatever they want, and I stand by that and support that 100%. So please know that you are always free to leave any opinion or arguments that you like on my videos. I'll never delete comments. I'll never be rude to you or try to silence you in any way or push back against your right to have an opinion. So please, don't feel that you have to agree with everything that I do and say. If you watch my videos, I'm not saying this to shame that commenter whatsoever. I just want to make the point that I am making videos about this case because it fascinates me. Um, and I don't make money off these videos, not yet anyway. My channel's not monetized. Um, but here on my channel, I make videos about topics that interest me, things I want to talk about. I don't make videos on topics purely for the sake of views or for the sake of getting attention. I have no interest in doing that. I simply make videos about topics that I enjoy and that I find interesting. And I hope that sharing my thoughts with those who watch my videos, people can perhaps learn something or it can spark some sort of debate or a thought or new way of thinking about the things that I talk about. And that's my only reason for making my videos. It's a hobby for me, it's a passion project, it's something I enjoy doing, and I don't do it for the money or for the attention whatsoever. Um, and having said that, I'm talking about this case in particular because I believe a great travesty of justice has taken place. We still, to this day, 16 years later, we don't know exactly what happened to Madeleine McCann. I believe she's dead, and those who are responsible have still not been brought to justice. And I think that it is worthwhile to continue talking about it, just like it's worthwhile to continue talking about other unsolved cases, and just continue to kind of spark investigation and discussion about cases like these, especially where they involve an innocent child. The attention that this case has received has been enormous. And I think it's because the general public really feels very protective of small children, and rightly so. And so when something happens to a child, we want to get to the bottom of it, and we want to see those responsible brought to justice. So that's part of why I'm talking about this case as well. But it is a fascinating case, and the more I look into it, the more I realize there are just so many rabbit holes that you can go down when you start, really diving into the case. It's just so interesting. And for someone like me who just has an interest in crime and an interest in unsolved cases or cases where there are a lot of question marks, I just think this is such a fascinating case to look into. Um, so let's get to today's video. And in this video, I want to look at what to me is one of the most fascinating aspects of the case. There are a lot of fascinating aspects to this case. I mean, that the general public really just don't know about. And if you are interested in looking into any of those aspects any further, I highly, highly recommend Richard D. Hall's series of documentaries. As I've said in other videos, I don't agree with all his conclusions. He tends to make logical leaps quite often, and I think sometimes he kind of manipulates the evidence a little bit to fit his own theories. But on the whole, his films are incredibly well researched, and he presents them in, the sort of detail that we just haven't seen anyone else do. I've never seen anyone who has researched this case as thoroughly as he has done. And he's presented in long video formats, which I personally just really enjoy. So some of my insights are derived from his documentaries. Others are derived from my own research that I've done. And yeah, there's just so much fascinating stuff about this case. But today I want to look at what for me is one of the most fascinating aspects, and that is the phone calls. More specifically, the phone records of Kate and Gerry McCann around the time of Madeleine's disappearance. We don't have a body in this case. Madeleine has never been found. And so all we really have to go on, if we want to look at what potentially happened to her, is the evidence surrounding, the holiday in Praia da Luz, and the evidence kind of everything that happened during those days leading up to when she was reported missing and afterwards. And using the various aspects and the various pieces of the puzzle, we can start to put together a picture of what might have happened. So the phone calls and the phone records of Kate and Gerry McCann is just really fascinating when you look at it. And I hope that this video is not going to be too disjointed. I hope you can follow my train of thought in this video. I'm going to be looking at a few different articles and sources. And just drawing your attention to some very interesting aspects. And I'm not going to be able to connect all the dots because it's not really possible to do at this stage. There's not really enough information to form a complete picture, but there are a lot of aspects that kind of jump out at you and are very, very striking. And, 2 or 3 aspects in particular are just like kind of a bit mind-blowing in my opinion. So the first thing I want to do is look at the report that was compiled from the PJ files, so the Portuguese police files. A Madeleine McCann researcher has done a fantastic job of kind of pulling out the most important aspects of the PJ files as they relate to the phone records of Kate and Gerry McCann. And highlighting just some important aspects for us. So let's have a look. And as I say, this information is taken directly from the PJ files. I'm just going to move myself over here. This researcher has pulled out so I've looked at the the PJ files as they relate to the phone records, and the document is incredibly long. I couldn't possibly go through it and read it to you all on this video. I'd put you to sleep. So this researcher, I'm very grateful, has done a great job of kind of pulling out some important aspects that we can look at. So the researcher says the PJ used a program called the Analyst's Notebook and Excel to handle what were very large data sets. So they were dealing with large data sets of information related to Kate and Gerry and their 7 friends that they were on holiday with. They analyzed the mobile phone activity of all 9 of these people. So the main focus of the research was limited to the evening of Thursday, the 3rd of May, but despite the problems, the PJ's work is impressive, innovative, and very detailed. So yeah, like the PJ, the Portuguese police, have done an absolutely brilliant job when it comes to analyzing the phone records. So don't believe what you hear or read about the Portuguese police being shoddy or lazy. It's totally not true. They've done an amazing job. So there was a brilliant analysis which unfortunately led nowhere based on the hypothesis of 2 abductors, each working with mobile phones in the Ocean Club area immediately before Madeleine was reported missing. And I think the reason that hypothesis went nowhere was because, in my opinion, Madeleine was not abducted. I think she died in apartment 5A. But let's continue. So there's another excellent piece of work which tracks down a misrouted call from Swansea to Kate McCann on at 11:21 on Wednesday, the 2nd of May, 2007. We're going to look at that in this video because that's very interesting. So, however, there is a potentially serious omissions. The most important records were not available when Mr. and Mrs. McCann attended their Arguido interviews on the 6th and 7th of September 2007. That's a pity. I think it would have been nice to see who they were talking to around the time that they were made suspects by the Portuguese police. And then there are no detailed call records from the mobile operators for Kate McCann, Russell O'Brien, Matthew Oldfield, and Jane Tanner. So I think they weren't able to get a detailed breakdown of phone calls from the service providers that these individuals used. But they were able to extract other data based on the phones themselves and the antennae that the phones were pinging from. When the PJ obtained the McCann's mobiles, they do not appear to have retrieved deleted data or to extract their contact or to have extracted their contact lists. Again, that's a bit of a pity. It would have been nice to have seen what the McCanns deleted, because as we'll see, Kate and Gerry deleted a certain amount of data off their phones. And I think it would have also been nice to see their contact lists. Would have been interesting. None of the telecom records show triangulation coordinates, but are limited to identifying the single primary antenna on which the calls were registered. So I'm not a phone analysis expert, obviously, so I don't know the significance of that. But I think we can still deduce a certain amount from the data that we can get from the Portuguese police files. The details of over 50 UK subscribers contacted by the TAPIS 9 in the critical period, as well as their onward local and international call records, was included in the rogatory letter request in December 2007. If this information was provided, it's not in the CD. So there was no list of the UK subscribers that the TAPIS 9 phoned. Anyway, so we can't have a look at that. Okay, so these omissions make interpretation of the data difficult, but what is available provides an interesting picture. First, it is obvious that, it's obvious that the memories in the McCann's mobiles were incomplete and in Kate McCann's case, selectively deleted. So that's interesting. Why would the parents of a missing 3-year-old be concerned with deleting data off their phones in the immediate aftermath of their daughter's disappearance? Why would they be doing that? What could possibly be the motive? Unless they were trying to hide something. Can you think of any other reason? Um, okay, so her mobile memory held details of 39 calls from 18:28 on Wednesday, the 25th of April to 16:35 on the 27th of April, 2007. So for those of you who don't know, the McCanns arrived in Portugal on the 28th of April. Okay. Um, After her arrival in Portugal on the 28th of April 2007, with the exception of one incoming call on Wednesday, the 2nd of May 2007 at 11:21, which very interestingly was the Swansea wrong number. We're going to look at that, as I said, later on in the video. And one call from her husband at 23:17 on Thursday, the 3rd of May 2007. Everything else has been whoosh clunked from memory. So maybe some of you who are a little bit more technical than me could explain what the term whoosh clunked means. I imagine it means just completely wiped from the phone's memory. There's no record of it on the phone at all. But if anyone wants to shed light on that term, please do so in the comments. These deletions could have been accidental, but a high degree of cunning would be implied. Yeah, so unlikely that the deletions from Kate's mobile would be accidental. She must have been specifically going through and deleting, certain calls, certain data selectively. And that would indicate a certain amount of planning and intention and cunning on Kate McCann's part, wouldn't it? Why would she selectively delete everything up to Thursday, the 3rd of May 2007, with the exception of one wrong number? Don't think it was a wrong number, as we'll see in a moment. And what was her reason for deleting 3 of the 4 calls between 23:14 and 23:17 from her husband on that critical night? So I mentioned these in a previous video. These phone calls, she deleted 3 out of the 4 calls that she made to Gerry between those times. A possible answer is that she wished to avoid alerting the PJ to evidence that details of around 40 calls had been erased, and she felt happier leaving something uncontroversial or misleading in memory for them to find. Another answer is that, unsurprisingly, she was under the most extreme stress imaginable following the disappearance of her daughter. But why in that case give priority to deleting anything? It is the last thing most parents would think about in the circumstances. The first call found in Gerald's mobile memory was timed at midnight on Friday, the 4th of May 2007. So the same night, just after midnight on that night that Madeleine was reported missing. Again, matching antenna records to memory suggests that by the time he gave the handset to the PJ, the records of 24 calls or SMSs had been erased. So 40 calls were erased from Kate's mobile and 24 calls or SMSs were erased from Gerry's mobile, including the one from him found on his wife's handset and timed at 23:17 on Thursday, the 3rd of May. It appears he had deleted details of the 4 calls he made to her that night, and she deleted just 3. It was this simple discrepancy that first led the PJ to suspect interference with the handsets. So that kind of implies that maybe they were working together to delete data off their phones, but Kate left 1 call still in her phone memory while he deleted all of the calls. If the deletions were deliberate, and it is an if, it implies the McCanns were both forensically aware and crafty and wanted to hide something from the PJ. For this reason, it is important to explore the call record data and to match it against the other evidence. On Saturday, the 28th of April 2007, after their arrival in Luz, Kate McCann's mobile triggered the antenna 9 times. It is not possible to say from the available records whether these were incoming or outgoing calls or SMSs, or for how long they lasted. The last activations were at 8:55 and 8:59, when, based on their statements, the Tapas Nine returned for an early night after eating at the Millennium restaurant with their children. All of these records were erased from the memory of Kate McCann's mobile. Gerald McCann's mobile did not activate any of the Luz antennae that day. On Sunday, the 29th of April, 2007, that's the day a lot of Madeleine McCann researchers believe she died, and I'll go into that more in a future video. The first activation of Kate McCann's mobile was at 9:23, but again, there are no Vodafone logs or time bars to provide further detail. However, by internally matching the antenna records, it appears she called her husband at 12:26 and 5:02. The creche records indicate that he collected Madeleine at 12:15. He also picked up the twins around 5 o'clock, but mistakenly recorded the time as 12:30. Interesting. Chances are that the calls from Kate McCann were to check he had picked up the kids. At 10:13, Gerald McCann received a call from a UK mobile. The last activation by Kate McCann's mobile was 7:30 and Gerald's at 5:02. A pattern on this sheet, and it applies to all of the Tapas Nine, is that no activations took place at any time during the week while they were at dinner. Interesting. So Clarence Mitchell had said that they left their phones in their apartments while they were at dinner. So maybe Clarence Mitchell is right after all, and that they were so into each other that they didn't want to be disturbed while sardine munching and left their mobiles in their rooms. They were never specifically asked this question, but it is very important, and the point will be addressed later. So on Monday, the 30th of April, 2007, neither of the McCann's telephones activated the Luz transmitters. This looks very odd, especially as they were around the Ocean Club to shuffle the kids to and from the creches. On this afternoon, Madeleine remained in the creche for only 15 minutes and was picked up by her mother at 15:30 or 3:30. We do not know what Madeleine did for the rest of the day, but it is possible she was being fractious. So that's Monday, the 30th of April. I've talked about Madeleine's behavior in other videos where there is quite a lot of evidence to suggest that Kate McCann found Madeleine difficult to handle. Most likely Madeleine was just a normal 3-year-old. I mean, I don't know how many of you have spent much time around 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds, but they are, they can try your patience. They are like very boisterous, most of them. It's a very, it's an age at which children are kind of getting their independence and their voice, and they can be a handful at that age. It's perfectly normal. And caring, patient parents understand that and realize that it's a phase that small children go through around that age. But there is evidence that Kate found Madeleine to be difficult to handle, and just kind of just found her to be a bit too exuberant, and probably the sort of thing that most other parents wouldn't have thought too much about, or it wouldn't have bothered them as much. It seems to have bothered the McCanns, Madeleine's behavior. So it's an aspect of my theory that I'm kind of working on, that I think possibly Kate and Gerry found Madeleine a little bit much to handle, even though by all accounts she was just a very normal child. So to continue, interestingly, a friend of Mr. and Mrs. McCann supposedly told the dispatches team that made a TV program on the tragedy that Madeleine was a screamer. We've heard this from other sources as well. Kate in her book talks about Madeleine being a screamer when she was a baby, crying and screaming for 18 hours a day as an infant. And then we have other witnesses tell us that they heard Madeleine screaming and crying, and we know that on this holiday, Kate and Gerry really didn't spend a lot of time with the children. To me, it suggests that Kate and Gerry found their children a little bit difficult and were kind of like trying to distance themselves a bit. That's what it says to me. Yeah, anyway, as I say, that these are probably perfectly normal children, but Kate and Gerry, just to me, they seem like the types of people who maybe just didn't have the patience that is needed to interact with small children, on a very regular basis. So to continue, this could be interpreted in one of two ways, but any use of the past tense in referring to Madeleine would be very significant. Yeah, so the witness said, or this friend said that Madeleine was a screamer, suggesting that, she might not be with us anymore. It was this past tense referral to her supposedly living children that alerted the FBI to their murder by Susan Smith, their mother. On Tuesday, the 1st of May, 2007, Gerald McCann's handset was silent all day. Kate McCann's mobile first activated the Luz antenna at 10:16, but all details of the day's calls have been deleted from the handset, and there is nothing in the CD from her mobile provider. Another activation took place at 12:17. The crash records show that Gerald McCann picked up Madeleine at 12:20, a little bit earlier than usual, but Kate McCann's call at 12:17 does not appear to have been to him because his mobile didn't activate at all that day. Kate McCann dealt with her last call before leaving for the tapas bar at 8:35. At around 8:45 p.m. on Tuesday, the 1st of May 2007, Miss Najua Chakaya, the Ocean Club's busty aerobics instructor, held a quiz night and was later invited, allegedly by Gerry, to join his table, which she did, sometime between 9:30 p.m. and 9:50 p.m. She didn't say how long she remained with them, but she is not the sort of woman men would wish to see leave too quickly. So yeah, Najua Chakaya, who was the aerobics instructor and who held the quiz night, was said to be quite an attractive woman who apparently Gerry McCann invited to join them. And Kate was said to have not been too happy about this. And so we go on to read, Miss Chakaya stated that one dinner setting was unused and she could not remember seeing Kate McCann. So we're going to look at another source that shows that Kate McCann at this time was most probably in the apartment and not having dinner with everybody else. She seems to have been upset with Gerry that night. And we don't know exactly the reason, but I think she mentions that Gerry wasn't paying her a lot of attention that night. So anyway, make of that what you will. However, both Jane Tanner and Russell O'Brien have stated that he did not go to the tapas bar on the quiz night, but stayed in their room. So Russell O'Brien stayed in their room looking after his sick daughter. Jane Tanner took his dinner to the room, thus explaining the unused place setting. Russell O'Brien was not asked by either the PJ or Leicestershire police whether he had heard Madeleine crying. So it seems as if the empty place setting might have been Russell O'Brien, but then there's also evidence that Kate left the table early as well, which we'll look at. Kate McCann's mobile was next activated 6 times in rapid fire between 10:15 and 10:27 after she returned to apartment 5A after dinner. Okay, so she returned to the apartment on Tuesday night before Gerry did, and then her mobile phone activated 6 times. The antenna traffic proves these calls were not made to any of the Tapas 9. Evidence from the call logs gives the strongest clue that the Tapas 9 left their telephones in their rooms when they went to dinner. Clarence Mitchell confirmed this. He said, you had 9 people in a bar without watches on, without mobile phones, and absolute panic set in when they realized what happened. We would say that if the police had a perfect timeline across 9 people, that would be a damn sight more suspicious than the fractured illogical composite statements they might have got. Mrs. Fenn, the McCann's neighbor, so Mrs. Fenn was staying in the apartment above the McCanns, reported that Madeleine had cried for her father between 10:30 and 11:45. The evidence shows that Kate McCann was in apartment 5A 14 minutes before Madeleine started crying. That's interesting, isn't it? So we have Mrs. Fenn reporting that she heard a child crying for an hour and a quarter on the Tuesday night, the Tuesday the 1st of May. And yet Kate McCann was supposed to have been in the apartment during that time. Interesting. Let me know what you guys make of that. There's been some speculation over the credibility of Pamela Fenn's evidence, but so I'm not 100% sure what to make of it. Bear in mind, the Oldfields, Rachel and Matthew Oldfield, stayed in the apartment next door to the McCanns, and they also had a small daughter. So it could have been their daughter that Pamela Fenn heard crying. We just don't know. There's not enough evidence to say for certain what the crying that Pamela Fenn said she heard was all about. But we'll just leave that there. I'll leave that there for you guys to think about for the moment. Tuesday, the 1st of May 2007 is the only night, except of course for Thursday, the 3rd of May, that either of the McCanns or any of their friends made calls after dinner. Mrs. McCann volunteered to the PJ that on the night of Wednesday, the 2nd of May, she slept in the spare bed in her children's room because her husband had not paid her enough attention over dinner. Or put another way, does she mean the amorous Jerry was paying someone else like Miss Chikayo too much attention, causing her to stomp out of the tapas bar before him, ultimately leading to the spare bed in a strop? Gerry McCann said he thought the reason his wife had slept in the children's bedroom was because of his snoring, and he didn't even bother asking her the following morning what the problem was. Real stand-up guy, Gerry McCann, isn't he? Could it be that their timings are wrong by 24 hours and that Kate McCann's nocturnal shenanigans took place on the night of Tuesday, the 1st of May? It would fit, but why be untruthful about it? A possible reason is they wanted to conceal both Kate McCann's state of mind and the fact that she'd returned to apartment 5A just before Madeleine cried for help. Now, initially, I was kind of working on an idea that Madeleine might have died on Tuesday, the 1st of May, on the night of Tuesday, the 1st of May. And that's still a possibility, I believe. I'm just not 100% sure yet. Not that you can be 100% sure about anything in this case, but I still think that's a possibility that Madeleine could have died on Tuesday, the 1st of May, on that night. On Wednesday, the 2nd of May, Kate McCann called her friend Amanda at 7:36 and again at 7:36:41 and again at 7:36:45. So really early in the morning, really, if you're on holiday, that's pretty early to be calling the UK. This was around 2 hours earlier than any of the mobile activations on any other morning. So Kate McCann was up with the larks. So this was unusual for her to be making phone calls that early. That was not something that they generally did on holiday. They, phoning friends in the UK that early. So what was she calling Amanda about? Be interesting to know. Amanda returned the calls at 7:50. There's no record of how long any of these calls lasted or whether they were SMSs. They were all deleted from memory. Interesting, isn't it? So Kate deleted all of these calls or SMSs from the memory of her phone. At 8:07, so this is Wednesday, the 2nd of May, Gerry McCann received a call from the SMS message center, but doesn't appear to have responded. At 8:50, Kate McCann received a call from a UK mobile and returned it at 8:53 before going to play tennis. Gerry McCann received a series of calls from his SMS message center between 9:10 and 10:47, again without response. At 11:21, so this is again Wednesday, the 2nd of May, Kate received a call from what appears to be a landline in Swansea. The report by Inspector Diaz researched this call and discovered it had not activated any of the Luz antennae. But digging deeper, he found another UK mobile had triggered the Luz antenna when connecting to the same Swansea number at 14:01. He dug even deeper, tracked all of the calls made from Luz, and established it had no connection whatsoever with any of the Tapas 9. The Swansea call to Kate McCann was simply a wrong number, misrouted and not logged by the Luz antenna. Now, I don't believe that actually was a wrong number. We're going to look at evidence in a moment that suggests that it might actually have some significance to this case. But the Portuguese police didn't investigate it more than that at the time. But there was evidence that came out later that suggests this particular phone call might be significant. So the report goes on to say, what Inspector Diaz did not realize was that the Swansea call had become so special to Kate McCann that when deleting all of the other Portuguese call records from memory, she decided to leave this one intact. I think that is interesting as well. So she deleted all of her other calls but left that one in there. You know, why? Gerry received 5 further calls from the SMS message center, and at 3:50 called 91121, probably to collect his messages. He received further calls from the center at 5:49 and 7:49. The records provided by Vodafone show these calls, but they originate from a different mobile number. At 8:08, so at night, Kate McCann received 2 calls from a UK mobile, and 6 minutes later, Gerry McCann called again to collect messages before he left for the Tapas bar. This was the last activation of the day by either of the McCanns, probably confirming their mobiles remained in apartment 5A when they went to dinner. On Thursday, the 3rd of May, so the day that Madeleine was reported missing, at 8:23 and 8:24, Kate McCann's mobile activated the antenna to call a particular number. There's nothing in the file to indicate the owner of this mobile, but it doesn't appear to be any of the McCann family or friends. Interesting. At 12:24, Gerry McCann received a call from a UK mobile. Again, there's no clue in the file to the subscriber's name. At 12:31, Kate McCann received a call or SMS from her mother's mobile and responded an hour later. Neither of the McCanns appears to have had any further activity on their telephones until after Madeleine was reported missing, when Gerry McCann called his wife 4 times between 11:14 and 11:52. At 11:40, he called his sister Trish Cameron, and at 11:52, Janet Kennedy. I think that's a relation of Kate's, Janet Kennedy is. The batch of SMS messages received by Gerry McCann on Wednesday, the 2nd of May, seems to have caused him some anxiety. Although the number, and it gives the number there, is in a block allocated to Vodafone, the company has no record of the subscriber's name. When the number is dialed, connection is made to a recorded message which explains that changes have been made to the way customers can access their mailboxes. So it seems like that number was the number that Gerry called in order to access his voice messages from, possibly a phone in the UK, and he was having voice messages rerouted to this number. That's what it seems to be. Thus, the number appears to be a message box for Gerry McCann that sends him an SMS when his mobile is unable to accept a call. So Gerry has denied receiving these SMS texts, which they seem to be just from his message box, and yet he denies receiving them. He said in an interview, "No one has ever asked to see any of my text messages. There is no way there were 16 messages on that day or even the day after, the day after, we got, Kate McCann came to his rescue and interrupted. Gerry hardly ever sends text messages until the day after Madeleine was taken." Gerry continued, "So, that is actually rubbish." Well, it's not rubbish. It's fact that his phone did receive these text messages. So it's, very bewildering why he would deny that. So why deny an allegation that was never made? The question was about received messages, not those sent. And on the day before, not on the 3rd of May or the day after. In forensic linguistics, you must always concentrate on the precise wording of denials, and especially on those of allegations not made. The denials by the McCanns are suspicious. However, Mrs. McCann's statement about her husband not sending SMS messages until after Madeleine's disappearance is confirmed by Vodafone's records. Mr. and Mrs. McCann were never closely questioned by the PJ about the detail of their calls, but Gerry McCann excused the deletions by saying that his telephone's memory only retained details of the last 10 calls made. That just seems bizarre to me. I've had mobile phones since they first came out, and even back in 2007, phones were fully capable of storing more than 10 calls worth of data. So, so it goes on to say this obvious inaccuracy, it had already retained details of 17 calls, does not appear to have been challenged by the PJ and does not in any way explain the deletions from his wife's handset. So the bottom line is that Kate McCann was in apartment 5A when Madeleine cried for her father between 10:30 and 10:45 on Tuesday, the 1st of May 2007, leading to a unique flurry of late night calls and to unique calls very early the following morning. A forensic examination of the records of Madeleine's attendance at the Lobsters Creche on Wednesday the 2nd and Thursday the 3rd of May is critically important because if they have been falsified to establish she was there when she was not, this case takes on an entirely new dimension and sets different search parameters. So I think it's possible that the creche records were falsified. I'm not stating that as fact. It's just something I believe is possible. And I'm going to look at that in a little bit more detail in my next video where I describe what I think happened to Madeleine. But yeah, I think it is very unlikely that Madeleine was actually alive after Tuesday, the 1st of May. I think she was dead by then. So it's very interesting when we look at the phone records of Kate and Gerry around this time. Secondly, if the memories of the mobile telephones were deleted in the way suspected, a level of cunning is implied that would be capable of conceiving a plan to deliberately delay reporting Madeleine's disappearance, if for no other reason than to disassociate it from the crying incident on Tuesday, the 1st of May 2007. Of course, this is speculation, and it is entirely possible that further investigation and the much-awaited transparency by Mr. and Mrs. McCann will totally exonerate them. And we know that Kate and Gerry have never been transparent about their phone records. They've never come forward with more information about these deleted phone calls and messages. They've never, ever explained their phone activity in more detail. So this transparency that we've hoped to see from Kate and Gerry has never happened, and that in itself is suspicious. Why don't they simply produce the SMS messages and explain why call details were deleted? Okay, so that I think gives us a pretty comprehensive overview of the McCann's phone activity and the calls that were deleted and the calls that were made, text messages. In some cases, it's not possible, like with Kate McCann's mobile, it's not possible to know whether they were phone calls or text messages, but we do know when her phone was active, and we know, what has been deleted off her phone. So this post refers to a call from a number in Swansea, which Kate says was the wrong number. I just want to look at something which is very interesting to do with this phone call, which kind of demonstrates that it's not a wrong number and it might actually be significant. So I'm going to go over to the complete Mystery of Madeleine McCann blog and read an article from there which helps to shed light on this. So Justine McGuinness was one of the spokespeople hired by the McCanns in the early stages of the investigation. The McCanns have had a variety of PR people working for them over the years, and Justine McGuinness was one of the first people. Um, so Justine McGuinness, the McCann spokeswoman who accompanied them in their getaway for England soon after they'd been constituted as Arguidos. So just a side note, Kate and Gerry vowed not to leave Portugal until they had found Madeleine. But when the Portuguese police made them suspects in the case, they actually hot-footed it out of Portugal and left to go back to England. So Justine McGuinness left in their apartment that served as headquarters to the couple several documents. I think she's talking about the villa where the McCanns stayed after they moved out of apartment 5A. So she left several documents, including photographs, establishing a possible link between Madeleine's disappearance and the riverside of the Ribeira de Viscao, I hope I'm saying that correctly, near the border with Spain. Today, after 19 months have passed since the day in which Madeleine disappeared, the clue left by Justine McGuinness gives again something to talk about. It is on the day of Kate and Gerry's escape for England to the 9th of September 2007, 4 months since the disappearance of Madeleine, that the PJ put their hands on a series of documents left in the villa up to the time occupied by the couple. So that was their villa that they were staying in, which includes photos and even a sketch indicating a detailed location of a place on the border between the Alentejo and the Algarve, to 20 kilometers of Almodovar, crossed by the Ribeira do Viscao. The inspectors of the PJ entered at the house soon after the departure of the McCanns for the airport. So the police came and searched the house where the McCanns were staying just after they left for England, thus taking advantage of the fact that journalists had accompanied the couple. The documents left behind by Justine McGuinness were found underneath a sofa, and they had, besides the identification of a quite precise geographical zone, countless inscriptions that the PJ never managed to interpret. According to sources close to the inquest, nothing was done in, I think it means investigation, this has been translated from Portuguese, I think. Nothing was done in this sense, and the men of the PJ who would have looked at the documents as the work of an esoteric group didn't even bother to visit the place indicated, considering the clue as being worthless for the case. The spokeswoman of the McCanns, who accompanied them during the days in which the couple was made arguidos before the Portuguese justice, would be fired upon arrival to England. Yeah, so Justine McGuinness was not getting along with Kate McCann, and she was fired soon after the McCanns returned to England, and she was the one who left these documents and photos behind in the villa for the police to find. This despite the fact that she might reveal herself as one of the most worrying witnesses for the couple and for the British authorities themselves. What is certain is that Justine McGuinness was never questioned by the judicial police, and therefore the exact meaning of the documents and photos was never explained. In declarations recorded recently in London, sources close to the former candidate of the Liberal Party, an expert in PR, confirmed that Justine McGuinness has even been the target of various pressures, specifically in the legal field, indicating that she should remain silent over everything she saw or heard during the time she worked with Kate and Gerry McCann. What is certain is that the former spokesman of the couple was already obviously at odds with the couple, especially Kate McCann, on the day that she left Portugal with them, and it was no surprise to anyone, the divorce upon arrival in England. Justine always wove harsh criticisms, some of them in the presence of journalists, at Madeleine's mother, and the bad relations between the two women surpassed the financial issues. where Justine constantly demanded payment for her work and numerous hours spent beside the couple, as well as for meetings and dinners with journalists and British authorities. So there's seems to be a suggestion that Justine McGuinness left these photos and documents behind in the villa, kind of maybe to get a dig in at the McCanns because she was not getting along with them. So today, everything might be forgotten if it wasn't for the results of an investigation into the telephone calls of the McCann couple and all of the persons who were in contact with them, carried out by journalists in collaboration with former operational elements from the Secret Intelligence Service. While investigating the calls received and done by the McCann's mobile phones during their stay in Portugal, investigators found a report from Inspector Paulo Diaz of the PJ, where it is confirmed that Kate received on the 2nd of May at around 11:21 a call from Swansea, which later she would justify as being a mistake. A sufficiently important mistake so that she guarded the register of this call in her mobile, in spite of having deleted details of other communications. More interesting, the investigators, used to dealing with sensitive cases, also found the register of a phone call made on the same day after lunch between a mobile phone in Praia da Luz and the same number of the Swansea number that had contacted Kate McCann. The mobile from which the call is made does not belong to any of the McCanns or the group of friends who were accompanying them. And up to today, the PJ, despite several requests to the English authorities, have never been able to identify the owner of that mobile, nor have obtained English support or willingness so that they questioned whoever it was regarding these calls. While cross-referencing the results obtained next to the mobile telecommunication operators in Portugal and in Spain, with the reports of the PJ, in particular the excellent work of Inspector Paulo Diaz, investigators and journalists found a new element worthy of interest. The mobile phone used in Praia da Luz to call the number from Swansea who had contacted Kate on May the 2nd was used to make and receive calls in the area indicated in the documents and photographs that the McCann spokeswoman left under the sofa on the day that they ran off to England. So the Swansea number that phoned Kate McCann on Wednesday the 2nd of May was used to make and receive phone calls in the exact same area that was indicated on the photos and documents left in the McCann's villa. Is that not just so fascinating and interesting? Would you not just love to know what the significance of that is? According to the records now known, the mobile phone was used near the Ribeira de Vascão on several occasions, namely between the days the 12th and 15th of May, but equally in June and July of the same year. These phone calls were always made to England or to Praia da Luz, except for one which was made to the British Embassy in Lisbon. Just absolutely fascinating. I can't get over that. Please let me know what you think about that in the comments. Obviously, I think this is incredibly significant. I think to me it suggests that potentially Madeleine was disposed of in that area with the help of someone, you know, who was either staying in that area or living in that area, and who was in communication with Kate and Gerry McCann as early as Wednesday the 2nd of May 2007. Okay, so I think this is just absolutely fascinating because it almost, if you look at it, almost appears to suggest that there might actually be a location where Madeleine might have been, as I said, I don't like to use the words disposed of, but yeah, that is probably what happened. I think if we look at this particular aspect, and that they may have been helped by someone who was present in that area, who was making phone calls um, to Kate McCann on Wednesday, the 2nd of May. It would be really interesting to see what was found if the police were to do a thorough investigation of this area. So to me, this is just the way I interpret this. This is kind of the most conclusive evidence that we have so far of where Madeleine might actually be. And it clearly implicates Kate and Gerry if we look at, what has come to light here. The next piece of information I want to look at, which also relates to the phone calls, is a phone call made by Russell O'Brien on the day after Madeleine was reported missing. So I'm going to pull up a different article. Oh, excuse me. My memory is not serving me as well. It's getting late in the afternoon, but it wasn't Russell O'Brien, it was David Payne. And David Payne was said to have called a child abuse phone number back in the UK. So let's have a look at this article. David Payne's call to child abuse. David Payne phoned the Metropolitan Police Child Abuse Team on May the 4th, 2007 at 23:13. So very late at night on the day after Madeleine was reported missing. This is David Payne, not Russell O'Brien. Apologies for that mistake earlier. When questioned about this call by Leicestershire Police, David Payne tried to deny it. But when questioned further, David Payne was forced to admit he had made this call. The statement from social worker Yvonne Warren Martin, who thought she recognized David Payne. Yvonne saw Payne in the morning, and by the evening, Payne was himself ringing child abuse. Possibly Payne also recognized Yvonne. So this is a snippet about the phone call from the rogatory, which I gather was a type of interview conducted by the Leicestershire Police. So David Payne says, there was the other person who contacted me, which I didn't mention while I was at the police station, was one of the Portuguese newspapers, and, asking, for comments. And so that could have been what the number. I did speak to the friends of Simon Eldridge's, who, kindly bought the phones, and they actually bought the phones to the Portimao police station, and I went downstairs and got the phones and then brought them back upstairs. In terms of, whether we spoke to them on the next day, sorry, was that the question? So he's kind of being a bit evasive here and kind of trying to backtrack on the fact that he might have called a child abuse hotline. So the police interviewer says, well, you spoke to them on the next day, that Madeleine went missing on the 4th, right? That's when, well, there's text messages, but what I'm asking you is, did you speak to them? So David Payne says, I don't remember having any text conversation with any Portuguese newspapers, so I presume that Portuguese number, the other Portuguese person I spoke with, there was a solicitor in Lisbon who the conversation, it might have well been with Lisa Lacani, because that was a friend of their family who they've got business in the UK, but they deal with Portugal. And Lisa said, if you need any Portuguese advice, then there's Paulo. And again, I've got his number in my other phone, which might clarify that bit. So this is interesting. David Payne is talking about a solicitor in Lisbon who he phoned, and we see that this was most probably on behalf of Gerry McCann, that he contacted this solicitor the day after Madeleine was reported missing. Now, I think that's very interesting. By this stage, the day after Madeleine was reported missing, the parents, Kate and Gerry, were not suspects yet. The Portuguese police were still working on the assumption that Madeleine had been abducted. So why would Gerry McCann have needed to speak to a solicitor? Why would he have needed legal advice? We're going to look at that aspect a little bit more, a little bit later on in the video, but I just want you to make note of it for now. So then David Payne says, and I did speak to him again after that day, so it may well have been him, just to say, oh, you know, do you want any help? Do you want any advice? And that, you know, that's how it was left at that stage. So it might have been piecing it together from what you're saying. And the interviewer says, do you recall me telling you about the London number, which you couldn't find in your phone? Yes, that number actually transcribes back to the crime specialist director in London. Did you contact them? Yes, I did. My sister had been in contact with them, and she was trying to do everything that she could, knowing the difficulties that we were having out there. So, I did approach them just asking for advice, but I can't remember. I don't think I actually spoke to anyone there, but for some reason that wasn't carried forward. So suddenly, suddenly he can't remember making the phone call. Um, he has amnesia all of a sudden. But I mean, just into the context of the conversation, we're in a strange country. We've got no representatives. We don't know what's going on. All hell's broken loose. And, to see whether you can do anything to help Madeleine come back, and that was the lines we were taking. The interviewer says, do you remember who you spoke to? I don't know, he says. The call was made on the following day at 23:13, so that's late at night. And David Payne says, you don't recollect anything else about the conversation that you had with that? Was it you that made that call? I know that I got phone numbers from my sister, which I did, ring them, but I can't remember making one late at night. So essentially, David Payne is saying, yes, he phoned the child abuse hotline at the Metropolitan Police in London, but he doesn't remember doing it, and he doesn't remember who he spoke to or if he even spoke to anyone. But that's curious, isn't it? I mean, for him to be calling child abuse the following day, what is that about? What can we deduce from that? I mean, there are a couple of possibilities. It could have been, like he said, that he was just reaching out for help. He didn't know who to contact in order to get advice about what was happening with Madeleine, and he thought maybe calling the Metropolitan Police, they could maybe start to put some wheels into motion in terms of trying to find Madeleine. But to me, it's suggestive, if it was a specific child abuse number that he phoned, to me, it suggests possibly that David Payne was concerned about something to do with Kate and Gerry's behavior at that early stage. Now, David Payne might have thought better of that later on and decided he didn't want to get involved and that he would rather protect the McCanns for whatever reason. I think, honestly, that is what's happened. The Tapas 7, meaning the friends that were on holiday with Kate and Gerry, have been incredibly tight-lipped, and they've defended the McCanns to this day. And I think they have been persuaded into taking that course of action over the years and, not revealing any information that they might have had about what was going on behind the scenes with the McCanns. But I just think that is very suggestive and very interesting that David Payne phoned a child abuse hotline the day after Madeleine was reported missing. And I just wanted to also just point your attention to the fact that he said he called a solicitor in Lisbon, and he'd been given the number from someone that he knew back in the UK who also had business in Portugal, who'd given him this solicitor's phone number. And again, it just makes you wonder, why were the McCanns and their friends so keen on getting legal advice and legal representation so soon after Madeleine was reported missing? Why was that their concern? Why was that their focus? It kind of makes you think of the statement that Kate McCann's uncle, I I'd said he was Kate McCann's father in another video, but he was actually her uncle. He gave an interview to TV about the Madeleine McCann Fund, you know, just a couple of weeks after Madeleine was reported missing, and he mentioned that the McCanns needed money for legal fees. Now, why do the parents of a missing little girl need money for legal fees so soon after her disappearance? It's fishy. It's just, in my opinion, allegedly. So let's now want to look at a Facebook post that is part of the Madeleine McCann Facebook group called What Really Happened to Madeleine McCann. And a member of this group did their own investigations when it came to a phone number that you know, they saw on David Payne's phone records from the Portuguese police files. And we just seen David Payne refer to the fact that he called a solicitor the next day after Madeleine had been reported missing. Now, this member of the Facebook group took it upon herself. She had some knowledge of, I think she can speak fluent Portuguese, and she and another member of the group decided to call this solicitor in Portugal to see what they could find out. And here's what she says about that. So I'm going to pull up the Facebook post. Okay, so she says, someone had a question about Gerry McCann seeking legal counsel the very day Madeleine went missing. Couldn't find the post, but I'm happy to explain without giving away the jurist's info. So this Isabel McFadden says, the call was actually made to Payne's phone. So, sorry, I don't know if you guys can actually see that. Yeah, okay. The call was made to David Payne's phone. It's in Payne's call log. Gerry was smart. He knew police would look at his call log, so he gave away Payne's phone as his contact. So it seems as though David Payne made contact with this solicitor through a friend back in the UK, the solicitor who was in Portugal. And the solicitor called David Payne's phone and spoke to Gerry on David Payne's phone, which does seem a little bit cunning. Why would Gerry McCann not give his own phone number? But I think it's probably because he was trying to divert suspicion away from himself. Okay. So then she says, when Ben Salmon and myself realized there was an odd number in the center of Portugal that called Payne's number, I eventually called it and was told by this gentleman he was a lawyer. And the night Maddie disappeared, he received a call from a friend Gerry and him had in common. Must have been maybe David Payne or the friend back in the UK. So she said, I'd called him when we first found it, but made no sense. The number was to a company who distributed knives and high-end home items. Later, Ben and I decided to try again and actually ask questions. To my great shock, a gentleman answered, and it was a bit after hours. I mentioned in Portuguese that I was a researcher, and his phone number had shown up in the PJ McCann case files. That's the moment he said, yes, I'm a lawyer, and I spoke to Gerry McCann at the request of a friend we have back in England. We spoke for almost an hour. He explained to me that he tried to explain to Gerry he didn't need a lawyer as the PJ was doing all they could. So obviously this lawyer who spoke to Gerry McCann the day after Madeleine was reported missing might have been a bit confused by Gerry's phone call. Like, why was Gerry seeking legal counsel when he was simply the father of a missing child, and the Portuguese police were already doing everything that they could to try and find her? And I imagine probably for confidentiality reasons, the solicitor can't really divulge any more, you know, about his conversation with Gerry McCann and what they spoke about. But I do think that it's really interesting that Gerry McCann was seeking legal advice just mere hours after his daughter was reported missing to the police. What do you guys think about that? What does it suggest to you? To me, it doesn't suggest a parent whose primary concern is to have their daughter returned safely. To me, it suggests a parent who is primarily trying to cover their own hide. So that's everything that I wanted to talk about as regards the phone calls. There's probably a lot more that we could actually talk about on this topic, but we would be here all day, and I just wanted to point out those aspects which were particularly interesting to me, because I think they greatly contribute to our understanding of the case and of what probably happened. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the next video, where we will, dive into a very interesting discussion about what I think probably happened to Madeleine. And, of course, it's just my own theory and my own thoughts and ramblings based on my research. None of this is, stated as any sort of accusation or statement of fact. I'm not stating my theories as fact. I'm just bouncing thoughts around, based on the evidence that we have. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.